Have you ever noticed that just when things start going well, you somehow pull yourself back? You're doing the habits, you're feeling better, maybe even seeing results, and then suddenly you stop, you stall, or you go right back to old patterns. If you're new here, we're Jen and Aaron, friends, colleagues, and coaches in the health and wellness space. And today, we're breaking down the fear of success, why it happens, how it shows up as self sabotage, and how to start stepping into a new identity without shrinking back. Why do we fear success? Why do you think
Yeah,
that why do you think that is, Jen?
I
I
don't
have a
know.
few ideas.
That sounds so like crazy talk. What do you mean I would fear being successful? But it really does happen. I think that there's that fear of what if this actually works? Am I setting myself up to fail again? I outgrowing who I'm comfortable with. And so we often will say that we want to be successful, but it's the fear that we didn't see coming.
And most people don't talk about it either. It's something
Right.
that most people are not saying, but it is a really true feeling. We see it all the time when it comes to weight loss that if you've never achieved that specific goal
Yeah.
in mind, sometimes it's like, is it even doable? Am I setting myself up for like disappointment?
Right.
Where I'm at is predictable, it's comfortable. I know exactly how to live my life this way. How different will I have to be? Can I
Right.
even do those things?
Yeah, like especially as you mentioned, if we've never done it before. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, because some of us might have had a time in our life when we felt most successful. And so there's some evidence to support, okay, I've done it before, I can do it again. But then there's the evidence that comes from other people's success. And so we think, well, if they can do it, then I can do it. But as soon as it works, then I don't get to rely on my old excuses anymore. And so I think almost we're afraid of that. We're fearful of losing what's comfortable. And honestly, I think there's a little bit of comfort in either even what others expect out of us. Right? Like, are you the friend that never goes on the walks? You're the friend that always wants to go out to eat. Are you the wallflower versus the social butterfly? Your confidence level. And all of a sudden, you're kind of like changing the rules of your friendships when you want to be the center of attention, or you're comfortable in your clothes, or you're saying, hey, let's, go hang out at the beach on this summer day versus, wait, where did my fatigued, confident, stout, overwhelmed friend go that never, feels successful, never feels comfortable in her body. And we start to change the rules. So that's where the fear starts to get kind of sneaky. It's not that we're afraid of failing, but we might be afraid of succeeding and having to kind of figure out who this new version of me is.
I'd like to add that if you've ever been a serial dater, raise your hand, or serial dieter, raise your hand, and that I've been successful and then I gained it all back. And then I lost it and then I gained it. And so I've had a cycle of
Yeah.
gaining, losing. And every time I'm back in the lose mode, I do have that thought of like, well,
Mm.
how long is this going to last? How long will I be able to keep this up? Wait, somebody's going to figure this out. It's a charade. It's not real. And even people in your life, like, are you really doing that again?
And staying the same or staying stuck in this vicious yo-yo dieting cycle, or even the yo-yo dating, whatever that might be in this season of your life, that's predictable. And
Mm-hmm.
so now to be successful, it's requiring you to become somebody new. And most of us don't like change, let alone trying to envision what does the healthiest, strongest, confident, thinnest, whatever your goal is, what does that version of me look like? And then do I have to stay that way? And like, can I? Right? Like, I don't know. Maybe I can see myself crossing the finish line, but to be staying there and actually be living in this new healthy lifestyle, that can be some overwhelm and some discomfort for sure.
Let's be honest. It takes work. It takes consistency. And some of those things, they don't feel comfortable. Wherever you've been, you know your way there. It's not a whole, you don't have to think very
Yeah.
hard for it. You don't have to work very hard for it. Those thoughts of, can I really do this? they're valid and they're real. So when we have these thoughts, that loop, that self-sabotage loop, I thought this was a
Right.
really good example of like we decide we're going to do something and then we start putting the motion in and then we start to
Yeah.
see the progress and then all of a sudden that doubt, the fear,
Yeah.
that narrative, that creeping tape starts playing
Yes.
in your head. And then something happens where, like, you get sick or you get hurt or something comes up with your family and you can't do the
Right.
things that you were doing. And then you slip and then you go, oh, there it is. There it is. I was
Mhm.
waiting for you. I knew you'd show up.
Right.
So Jen, what as a health and wellness life coach, when you see
Mhm.
this with your clients, what kind of steps do you help your clients with to kind of get through that feeling of like it is kind of normal? Most people have it,
Mhm.
they may not admit it, but they have it. So what would you
Yeah.
say?
Really, I would reassure you that it's maybe not even the fear of success, but it's probably the fear of the pressure that we put on ourselves to stay there,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so now all of a sudden there's this whole other factor of, like I don't want to lose control. I don't want to be, worried about what this would look like. And so I probably would start with, where are these expectations coming from? And really to help a client, to help myself, to help you when we walk through, where you've been with your July goals, it really is, can you envision what this looks like, the livability factor, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if you want to get stronger, well, what does that look like for the long term? Not just, okay, can I go to the gym 5 days a week for the next month? Yeah, maybe you can, but forever, can you do that? And if
Mm.
not, that's where we have to kind of have that reality check of, does this future version of me, does that actually fit my lifestyle? Does that actually fit the season of my life? Who lives in my house? Who doesn't? And really to start to align an identity shift of like, okay, let me picture myself, future me, just as we did with you. Future Erin climbing the dune, strong, steady, confident, not worried about what she looks like from behind, huffing and puffing in a swimsuit or a pair of shorts, right? Like, no, like, how do you want to actually live this? And so, really start to figure out. Step one is, who is the healthiest version of me? What does she look like? How does she order in a restaurant? What does she wear? Does she open up her closet and knows that everything fits? Or does she have to spend an extra 30 minutes trying on a few pairs of Spanx and, seeing if she can lay down to zip up her pants or not? Like, really, who are you? And so start with that. Like, future vision of yourself. How does she think? Does she continue to negotiate with herself? How does she motivate herself when things do get hard? When I feel sick, how do you power through? I'm not feeling the greatest today. Immediately, there's that little self doubt of, okay, could I ask Erin if we could record another day? Could I quick take a nap? And instead, there is it's not urgency, but it's kind of giving yourself that pep talk. And I'm like, all right, let's put on some makeup. Let's do your hair. Let's put on some jewelry. I even put on perfume. Like, you can't smell me. I'm just sitting at home. But part of it is like, no, successful me shows up and doesn't make
Mm.
excuses. So that's where, yeah,
Yes. There's so many days. I'm sure many of us wake up and think, oh, God, not today.
yeah,
But the reality is, you still got to do all the things. So it is a matter of like, how will I show up for this? Does it have to be perfect? Nope, doesn't have to be perfect.
like, what can I do on my hardest day?
Ooh,
And now,
having a
granted, if
plan.
yes. And of course, if I was, really, really sick, we would reschedule.
Mm-hmm.
But this is one of those things where I'm like, if I was having to go into the office, I'd probably go to the office, right? Like it wouldn't be a not feeling good that gives me a free pass
Yeah.
and in a different situation. And so maybe I do even need to be a little bit more realistic of like, here's ideal me and what I can accomplish. Here's me with extra energy. And then here's me on those days where I just don't want to, or I've got like the bare minimum to give. What does that look like? So I'm lowering the expectations of what success looks like. in the livable factor, in the day-to-day. Successful me on vacation. How does that Jen eat? How does that Jen dress? It's going to be different than successful, healthiest version of me raising my kids, right? And a day-to-day cleaning the house, kind of running errands kind of day. So we really have to kind of shift the goal from like, do I live like a woman who is at my healthiest versus it being like, oh my gosh, I've got 20 pounds to lose before that class reunion. Like how does that person actually keep the weight off, keep the goals moving? What does even healthiest version of me look like so that I can get past this fear of maintaining it? We have to normalize it.
It is about really, I think, spending some time deciding who you want to be. And we're in our 50s.
Mm-hmm.
We've lived so many different versions of ourselves already. If I think, I'm like, oh, well, there was that version, and then there was this version, and I continue to evolve. And so this would only be natural to really think about, like, all right, what do I want to do in my next chapter? Who do I want to be? How do I want to feel? How will I be able to
Yeah.
how will I fill the hours? How will I fill my tummy? Will I feel good in my clothes? Things like that.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with taking a moment to think about those things, but for some people, there is some hesitation of like,
Mm-hmm.
what if it doesn't come true?
Well,
What if I'm setting myself up for disappointment?
and my challenge would be, what if you succeed?
Yes, what
Right?
if
Like,
you succeed?
what if this works? What if this is the last time I have to start over on Monday? Because I'm taking the pressure off of keeping it at this high intensity, high pressure success of forever and just day by day intentions. I have a gentleman who just recently has lost a lot of weight and is, I think he's feeling pretty great. He looks great. And he had to go buy a new suit. His suit that he has is too large, right? Because he's lost all this weight. And he went into the suit shop and suit shop. I don't think they're called suit shops, are they? Whatever, you know what I'm talking about. So he goes in to buy the suit, grabs what he thinks is his size. And he said, I looked in the mirror and I thought, I look good. And then the salesman comes over and kind of grabs all this extra material from behind him and it's like, but you could look better if we switch up your size. Like you need to go smaller than you are realizing that you are. And he was like, oh, no, I'm not that size. And the gentleman was like, just try, right? Just humor me. Let's go try it on. And so comes out and he's like, dang, I do look good. It does fit. It is so much more flattering to have this show my shape, right? However, he said, my first thought is, am I going to spend this much money on a suit in this size? That means I have to keep this weight off.
Yes.
And there, all of a sudden, that just kind of started that inner voice, that inner critic, instead of being like, wow, I feel good. Like it went from, I feel great to, but, right? And all of a sudden, we're like starting down that slippery slope. So this is where we have to shrink the pressure and be like, and acknowledge your success and your wins, and probably even notice all the different versions of us that we have adapted to over the years, that in reality, we might think we're the same person. I am not the same mom to my two kids at home now that I was when I only had two kids at home the first round. Yes. We learn and we grow and we adapt in many parts of our life. So we got to just kind of build trust with ourselves and realize this isn't about being perfect by any means.
This is good. Anyone who's ever lost weight and went clothes shopping, you have that moment of like, you think you're a certain size and then you're like, oh, wow, okay, cool. I think more people should go shopping during their weight loss journeys because many people aren't happy with the number they see on the scale. But if they only went clothes shopping, they would discover how much physical changes have happened that they're not even aware of because they're still wearing those baggy clothes.
Right, we're not giving ourselves credit. And we're throwing in the towel before we fail ourselves. Just like sometimes happens with, we will go back to your serial daters. There are times that we're
dieters, not daters, dieters.
Well, daters too, dieters and daters. But I'm thinking even in a relationship, there are some of us who have never had a successful relationship. And then as soon as one starts to feel comfortable and like it's going well, there are some of us that then, well, I better break up with that person first. I have to dump my partner first before they do it to me, right? Because we've not seen what that looks like. And so hopefully that example kind of translates into our health. Well, I've never maintained this level of healthiness before. And so before it gets hard, let me just go ahead and quit. Let me go ahead and go back to the old me that I'm comfortable with instead of continually to kind of stop abandoning yourself, right? And start to build that trust with, okay, this is who I was. I don't have to do it forever, but I can prove that I can be successful, right? And so stop proving that you can't and start proving, for now I can. This isn't you versus your body anymore. This is you versus the you that you're scared of. Yeah. I heard, but for those that maybe feel like, okay, but what about me? I've already given up. I've already quit. This isn't about you starting over from scratch. You're starting over from experience. And that just really resonated with me to be like, hey, we're not all the way back at step one. We've just kind of done a little cha-cha, right? We've taken a couple steps back and now it's like, oh, wait, this feels comfortable. I know how to meal plan. I know how to order when I'm eating out without throwing in the towel. This is what I can do. So I just really hope and encourage our listeners to just realize that real results aren't built on your motivation, but it's partly visualizing that identity and knowing it's okay to envision new, healthy, confident you.
When was the time you were closer to your goal than ever and it scared you? How did you do that? How did you power through? Or are you still learning to manage those emotions? We'd love it if you could leave in the comments how you're doing with that. Next up, Jen's Coaching Corner.
You're not really afraid of failing. You're actually thinking, what if this really works? Because if it does, there's no going back to our old excuse. What if I lose all this weight only to gain it all back again? What if I do all this work and nothing actually changes? You start strong, you stay consistent, you even start to see some progress, and then something just shifts. You skip one day, and then another, and pretty soon we're right back where you started. Not because you can't do it, but there's a part of you who just doesn't trust you can keep it up. It was never just about losing the weight. It was about becoming the type of woman who doesn't throw in the towel or panic after one unhealthy meal or one bad day. Becoming the type of woman who shows up for herself, even on the days that aren't so exciting or great. That's what confidence really is. It's not about how you look, but about how you keep showing up for yourself. Because you don't need to prove to yourself that you can do this. You just need to stop proving that you can't.